PGA Nation, we are back. And we are back with the Farmers Insurance Open Torrey Pines South, a fun golf tournament in front of us this week. And there's a new face on the stream tonight, Virgil Herring. Thanks for joining us. In case you missed it, David couldn't make it tonight, so we brought in a big gun guest. Virgil has worked closely with Brandt Snedeker over the years. Brandt Snedeker, two-time winner of the Farmers Insurance Open. Virgil, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic, guys. Thank you very much for having me on. I'm excited to be a part of the Draftcast. This is going to be fun.
Well, we're super excited to have you on. Of course, we're going to bring in the experts whenever we can, and you are certainly going to be an expert in not only in golf, but in this tournament specifically. So we're super excited to have you on and draft with you tonight. We'll get back a little bit more into your background in a moment. But Spence, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, Joel. I will keep this short because I would like to hear Virgil talk about his experiences with Brandt Snedeker. I will say before we get started, though, David did win last week, unfortunately. 13-point edge over myself. Kurt Kitayama imploded there on Sunday through a stretch on a couple of those holes. Ended up surpassing me. So David has given the audience, as everybody can tell, the number one pick. You guys will be on the clock shortly.
Audience, congrats. Thank you, dude. And David, great draft that week, so congrats to David. We have some work cut out for us. We have to – listen, we're going to have a leaderboard this season. We can't let David get off to a lead, so good thing he's not playing this week. Opening up a spot for one of us to take a win. Maybe Virgil can get on that leaderboard as well tonight. But Virgil, I want to ask you, having coached someone who has won this tournament twice, what background do you have on this tournament? What type of golfer are you looking for here at Torrey Pines South?
Well, first of all, I mean, when you're working with somebody who ascended to number 6 in the world at one point, Brandt Snedeker, there's usually, when you're dealing with tour players, somebody that has a great career usually is one of the best in the world at something. And Brandt has consistently showed up as not only one of the best putters from 30 to 20 feet. He makes an abnormal share of long putts, but he also has one of the best short games inside of 90 yards that we've ever seen. He's probably one of the 10 best putters ever, and certainly top 50 wedge player. And so that allows him to get away with what we'd call middle of the road distance. But if you're talking about what I'd look for in this tournament, especially bet 3 of the 4 rounds are going to be on the South, the long straight hitters are going to stand out because 7,500 yards and the wind's going to be blowing. Now, yeah, it's going to be playing firm because it hasn't rained in a hot minute there. But at the end of the day, as most golf courses play, the guy who hits it the longest in the straightest has the statistical advantage in approach shots. So I'd be leaning toward the guys who have a history of driving it long and straight. But if they don't, they better have a great short game because the greens are really small. And one of the things that makes Brandt so interesting here is he's always loved this place, and he putts great on Poana greens out on the West Coast. And he always makes an appearance here, even when his game is not necessarily the best. He always plays well here because he loves it so much, and that's what I'd be looking for.
Boom. There you have it, right from the expert's mouth himself. So if you're betting on the tournament this week, these are the types of details and information you need to find an edge in handicapping the tournament and the golfers each week. In addition, we have yours truly, Spencer, who gives you the best course breakdown in the industry each and every week. Spence, what are you looking for at Torrey Pines South this week?
I like what Virgil said. I'm going to circle back to one of the points that he brought up in a second, because I do think when you look at this course, whether you take in a podcast like this, you read an article, you're going to hear a lot of the same answers throughout the space of what is the optimal path when trying to model this split course rotation that you have at Torrey Pines. Like, it's very easy to look at past leaderboards. You can look at the distance, the long iron proximity because of the long, narrow setup. It's a course that has thick rough. The contrarian in me, Joel, and, I always come on here and I try to think outside of the box. I'm not even going to try to differentiate or discredit any of those thoughts because at the end of the day, that is what you want at the South location. It's this behemoth of a property that really does take, as Virgil said, the longest and the straightest player and reward that skill set over and over again. The one difference that I ended up building in my model this week is I did put a little bit more weight on the North course. We kind of saw this come to fruition last week when we talk about the stadium course over at the American Express. Players that were able to find success there ended up having this heightened position to where they worked themselves up the leaderboard. It's going to be different here because in this particular situation, unlike last week, the North is the opportunity where you can really go out there and produce a total on the leaderboard to try to get yourself out ahead of everybody else. You have 7 holes that feature over a 20% birdie or better percentage. That includes 4 par 5s that are going to produce almost 15% higher birdie or better rates than what you get at the South. A lot of that ends up stemming at the North course from a POA bent grass mixture of the greens. It's bent, but there's a lot of POA that seeps through that property. You head over to the South, it's this straight POA. And the other difference with the North is it's just flatter at the end of the day with it. But what Virgil said that I really like, and I think is one of the mistakes that people make when building models, is you see 7,700 yards for the South, and immediately everybody wants to overweigh distance in a model. And while that is certainly going to be one of the core thresholds that you want to have, it's not the only way that you can find success here. Virgil talked about Brandt Snedeker being a player that has won in the past by using that short game, the short iron proximity. Max Homa's taken the same exact success out here in the past. So, there are a lot of players that if you do have that heightened success rate on POA greens, Snedeker, Homa, Jason Day's done that in the past. There are a lot of different ways that you can get around out here. And I think when you're building a model, when you put yourself into one corner of a statistical outlook, you kind of start building it either 1, too similar to everybody else, and 2, in a direction that kind of pigeonholes you, maybe in a way that you don't necessarily want to be.
All right, there you have it. As you can see, we already have the draft board up for tonight, so we will get pretty quickly into things. Audience, thank David. He won, and even though he's not drafting with us tonight, he gave you the first pick. So you guys are on the clock first. It looks like the pick might be in already, and it looks like you are intentionally trying to tilt either me or Spencer. So while I was trying to give David a thank you, I'm already taking it back as I am getting shots taken at me. But Ludwig, first pick, not a surprise. He's the best player. He is who I would have taken with the first pick here. As a quick reminder for those, if you're new to the show tonight, before we move on to my pick, log in on YouTube. If you log in on YouTube, you can draft along with the audience. So the first pick is in, but the next round, everyone can nominate a golfer, and the audience wins. The nominator is seconded, or so the player is named twice in the chat. That becomes the audience's pick. So log into the YouTube, get in the chat, get involved in the draft. Again, it works like a snake style draft, like you would in any fantasy football league you're in. We're going to go 1 through 4, audience first, me, Spencer. Virgil's going to go second. So Virgil, you're going to get 2 picks here when you're up in a row. And then we'll go back through the snake, back to Spencer, me, all the way around until we all have a full roster. Of course, the one caveat being you do need to stay within your DraftKings salary. So you can't just take all the best golfers. You need to make sure you can actually afford your lineup. All right. I am up with the second pick, and I am going to want to make sure I land one of the stars here. I think for me, there's a big 4 in this tournament. There's probably 4 guys that I really am prioritizing over the rest of the field. And with that being said, I'm going to take a little bit of a surprising pick here. Maybe not the guy that would most people would expect. Actually, no, I'm changing that pick. I'm taking Hideki. Who am I kidding? I was going to take a different pick, but Hideki's my guy. I'm not going to make that mistake. Hideki, obviously he's playing great. He's already won a tournament this year. In terms of upside, Hideki has as much upside as anybody, maybe except for Ludwig, or including Ludwig for a matter of sake. So don't need to go into too much details what to like about Hideki. He's obviously a great golfer. The detail we'll get into the later picks. But at 10-7, I think the price is right. There's no reason to be scared off with him here. Spence, with your first pick, who are you targeting?
So just for anybody listening out there, Oberg is number 1 in my model. Hideki was number 2. I think those are very standard answers that you would expect. I'm never drafting with Virgil and not knowing exactly which route he's going to go here. I'm trying to figure from a game theory perspective which is the best route to go in this direction. I'm going to pivot from what I initially planned to do. I think there's enough ways that I can round this out at the end and still feel comfortable. I'm going to take a golfer that I have just talked about a second ago, a name that has found no success over the past year, a golfer that if you really look into the data was probably the most overrated player on tour for a given 12-month span there. But there is so much I saw from Max Homa, specifically at the Century where the stats started to turn around and the only thing that lacked there was the putter. Max Homa at 8,600, in my opinion, is one of the best values that you can find on the board here. Number one player in strokes gained POA putting. He also brings in a top 15 projection for weighted proximity in my model and carries that increased projection for me on similar courses off the tee. So anytime you have thick, rough, narrow fairways, there is a reason why Homa's found success here. You look here at 18% ownership. That's clearly a higher number than if you weren't paying attention to what he's done here in the past and you would think what he would be. But I think this is warranted. I think this is good chalk. And I think Homa at the price tag has the ability to pay off in a really big way this tournament.
Oh, right. And I think one of the things I like about your Homa pick is we know the talent Homa has. He obviously got on a massive cold streak to end last season, which is why the prices dropped. People scared off. But that was a long time ago. And I think the odds are over the last 2 months, he's adjusted. He's corrected his game. I like Spence would bet on he gets back to his norm more so than the struggles we saw toward the end of last year. So at only 8,600, I think Max Homa presents a ton of upside in this, what is really after the top of the field, a watered down field. So Homa will be in my player pool for sure as well. All right, Virgil, your inaugural pick in the Draftcast. You have two here. How are you starting off your team?
Well, once again, if I'm looking at the longest, straightest, the ability to hit it out of the higher rough, it's certainly, this guy is definitely at the top of the pile. Now, the thing that has me the most concerned is the flat stick. But I believe with the weather getting a little bit less than spectacular on the weekend, especially getting much cooler on Sunday, and they'll have to probably be playing through rain on Saturday, I'm taking Tony Finau as my first pick. I expect the ball striking precision that he brings to the table to keep him in the mix, especially with what I'd call the limited talent in the field. That if he plays even at 85 or 90% of his talent level, he should be in the mix with 9 holes to play. And I think that's probably where I'm going to start for sure.
I love that pick, Virgil. For context, I was on the fence between Hideki and Finau with my pick. I invented taking Hideki, but it was neck and neck with Finau. I like Finau this week. He likes this course. He's played well here in the past. And like I said before, it really is a watered down field. In this field, other than the top, 4 or 5 guys, he is kind of head and shoulders above the rest of the field. So I think he's a ton of upside.
Yeah. And my second pick is another very good driver of the golf ball, and he's certainly streaky. He went to high school here in Tennessee, Steven Yeager. I believe that he has the potential. He can get hot. He is really accurate off the tee and long, and he is probably somebody I expect to really make a move in 2025. His game is rounding into form, and I believe that I won't be shocked at all if he wins this event, actually.
Wow, I love that pick, especially if Yeager gets a hot putter. I think there's a lot to like about him in this tournament. So 2 solid picks to start off here from Virgil. Spence, I would love to get your take on Virgil's 2 picks, and then you're up with your second.
I chased that Steven Yeager victory last year in the betting market. I ended up getting it out in Texas when he took down Scotty Scheffler. But when you want to talk about a total driving profile and what Yeager brings to the mix, he's 4th in my model this week when I graded it specifically for Torrey Pines and weighted total driving. That comes from the distance that he's added over the last 12 plus months, plus the off the tee and thick rough and off the tee and narrow fairways, inside of the top 10 for both of those 2 categories. And you will remember if you watched the tournament last year, after 36 holes, Steven Yeager was winning this event before he ended up faltering on the weekend. So I think the Yeager pick makes a bunch of sense. I had Tony Finau last week in my lineup at the American Express. Bad putter went cold at the stadium course. Unfortunately, he misses the cut there, but we've seen what Finau's done in the past at Torrey Pines. And if we just want to talk about pure course pedigree for this place, Finau's about as good as you're going to get. But I will move us into my next pick. I don't necessarily think this is the route that I need to take based off of the structures of everybody's builds right now, but when I look at this and I'm trying to figure out what is the ideal path that I want to go, and this is one of the spots for me that, yes, we can talk about distance, we can talk about all that, and Homa and my second pick here don't necessarily check these boxes. I am going to go back to the well on Sungjae Im after he burnt everybody last week at the American Express. I wasn't necessarily on him at the degree the rest of the industry was. He was outside of the top 25 for me at the American Express in pure upside in my model. That jumps into the top 2 for me for this tournament. It's very close between Oberg, Hideki, and Sungjae, however you want to split it. But one of the reasons why Sungjae has found success out here in the past is we can say that the proximity numbers are not what you would want them to be, but with such a heightened percentage that ends up coming from 200 plus yards, that is the one area of Sungjae's game where he has still remained elite inside of the top 25 for me in proximity from 200 plus yards. So as I said, I don't necessarily think this is the pick I had to make here with where everybody had their salary, but it just makes this lineup build a lot easier for me than getting stuck in a spot that I didn't want to be.
All right. I like it. Sungjae Im. If it didn't go there, I would have probably taken him there with my next pick. You know, want to get as much upside as possible. Virgil, we'd love to hear from you. Is Sungjae Im on your radar this week?
Yeah, he was. I almost picked him. Another premier ball striker. He hasn't really played well in the last couple of months. I don't know. It's very bizarre for him to be not playing well because he's played well literally for probably 4 straight years. But, you know, golf is really hard. And it doesn't take much to, you know, these guys are bizarrely fragile. And I've said this a long time as a coach. You're only one shot away from feeling like you can beat anybody. And you're only one shot away from feeling like you can beat nobody. And at the highest level, one shot under the most amount of duress when you really want it can really rattle you. Think Jordan Spieth, think Francesco Molinari. I mean, some of those guys have still not recovered from hole 12 at Augusta National, in my opinion. So, I mean, it doesn't take much to rattle people, and it doesn't take much to get one shot to change everything. But I just got to remember, golf is hard, but Sungjae Im is a ball striking machine, and this golf course has probably got his name written all over it.
There you have it. All right. Sungjae off the board. With my second pick, you know, I wanted Sungjae or Finau to fall to me. That didn't happen. So I'm going to pivot here. I'm going to take Max Grazerman. You know, young kid. I do think he's a little priced up here. I think this price is a little high, but I think the upside is there. And one of the things I specifically like about him is at the American Express, he gained 7 strokes on approach. His irons were dialed in, and we know he can find a hot putter. That is his trademark. We've seen him spike with that putter time and time again. If he continues to sink putts and has a semblance of the ball striking he had last week and even 3 strokes gained on an approach, I think he's going to get a really good result. So I'm okay to spend up and take a chance here on Max Grazerman. I also think his ownership should be a little bit suppressed because more people are going to put more attention towards Sungjae and Finau and Ludwig. So hopefully because of that price up in a GPP that can help you be the differentiator. Audience, good job starting to get some nominations in. Of course, you got 2 in a row here. So make sure you get plenty of nominations in. We're going to need those doubles to get these picks finalized. Virgil, I'd love to go back to you here. Is Max Grazerman on your card for this week?
Yeah, I mean, once again, he was probably he's one of the people I was looking at number 3 here. He works with a good buddy of mine who teaches over in Memphis, Jeff Smith. He's really, really great mechanics coach and one of the best in the world, really. And I've been watching a long time. He's got the precision that's required. He hits it plenty far enough. I don't know if he's emotionally and mentally ready to take on maybe a big dog at the top on the leaderboard on a Sunday. But if we're void of Ludwig or Hideki or any of the big names, he will be less apt to be taken aback by his emotional. He's new. He's only been out there a couple of years, and we saw how he has played well, but we also saw that the pressure got to him at least once at the end of last year. So hopefully he's learned from it. But this guy can absolutely stripe it, though. Good pick.
All right. There you have it. Pick endorsed. Audience, great job getting that pick in. Jason Day is off the board. Spencer, I'm looking at you here. We know he's your boy. I'm surprised. I can't remember the last time you drafted Jason Day. I'm sure it was sometime early last year, but it's definitely been a minute. Spence, because of your love for Day, what is your take on the audience's pick here?
I said this last year at some point. I don't really recall when, but I said it was new year, new me when it came to Jason Day, that I wasn't going to necessarily fall into this weekly trap with them all the time. When you look at the course history here, there's a ton to love. I had this discussion in my Discord channel that I have, and we were having this talk about Jason Day. And one of the questions that came up is, first of all, I'll give like the preface of this. He's 13th in my model this week. But a lot of that comes from the current form that we saw last week and the course history. Some of the statistical profile is not quite as clean. And I've said this a million times. I run my data from a longer term perspective than pretty much anybody out there. But some of the long iron proximity was not quite as crisp at certain points last year. I think that he loves this course and he's coming in with form right now. So I don't necessarily have a super strong take one way or another with him. The only thing I will say about the pick is he's going to be extremely popular. And I always worry about that profile when you get an extremely popular golfer that is getting thrusted up in ownership, mostly because of a course history answer. So I'll say I'm indifferent for the sake of this. I know there's a lot of negative words against it, but something has to be said about the stats at the end of the day.
All right. There you have it, Jason Day. Audience, your second pick is in. Aaron Rai. Lock it in. We saw Rai get hot last year. Will that continue in 2025? 8,300. I think he's worth the shot. I think the price is right there. Virgil, would love to hear from you. Are you interested in Aaron Rai or Jason Day this week?
Jason Day has me concerned because he's a very high ball hitter. His proximity to the hole, really outside of 2015 when he dominated, he has not really been that great of a precision ball striker. Now, he's played well here before, and he's really one of the best putters we've ever seen in the game. But he's not a threat to me with where the wind is coming and the temperature dropping. That doesn't bode well for his back. It doesn't bode well for his history of high ball hitting. You know, usually in San Diego, we'd like to think that it'd be 77 and like playing in the dome. And that's probably why he's had so much success. I don't really expect him to be a threat this week, even though he's one of the big names on the board. Aaron Rai was going to be my next pick. I think that he's a steal at the price that he's at. Underrated player, waiting for that big moment. I've been waiting for him to kind of pop through a couple of different times. I mean, yes, he's had some great success, but I really think he's set up for a big 2025. So good pick there.
Boom. Pick endorsed. Audience, great start to the draft. Now, you took a lot of your heavy hitters, so you're going to have to find some salary savers on the back end of your draft, but audience off to a good start. I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to take my value play with my third pick here, and that's going to be Lee Hodges.
Oh, my God.
Lee Hodges, I think, is a little bit getting overlooked this week, and tell me if you see different ownership numbers on him, but for the way he's playing, I thought the ownership number would have been a bit higher. I'm seeing about 8%. Now, if you look at Deeper Dive, he really struggled last year with his putter. I mean, he was really poor on the flat stick. But if you zoom in, he teed off twice so far this year in January, and he's gained strokes putting in both those tournaments. If he's corrected that putter, the rest of his game should fall in line. He's a good ball striker. He's gaining strokes there. He's good around the green. He's particularly good off the tee. He lost a stroke off the tee at the American Express, but that's an outlier for him. That's typically one of his strengths. So I believe in his game, his tee to degree game. And if he's improved that putter, which he's shown so far in 2025, I think at 7K, he's criminally underpriced. And the ownership, while it's a little high for a 7K golfer, is not as high as I thought it would be. So, Spence, you gave me an oh my God. I assume that's someone you were interested in. Is Lee Hodges on your radar this week?
So first of all, I see 3.5% right now, which is why I'm even more shocked at the number that you just gave. And maybe I am too low. I'll update it tonight. We'll see where it lands. The reason why I do think I might be correct on that ownership at the end of the day is because if you look at the course history for him, miscut. And a lot of people look at the course history, and that is one of the big selling points for them. All course history does not necessarily read the same way. If you look at Hodges specifically, of the last 2 years, he shot a 70 at the South in 2023. He imploded late at the North, ended up firing a 4-over round where he bogeyed 4 of the last 5 holes to miss the cut. So a very aberrational finish there to where he ends up missing the weekend. We go to 2024. He shoots a 68 at the North. Then he falters with a 2 over at the South. He triple bogeys a par 4 on Friday, ends up missing the cut there. My model is very exact with certain things of what it's trying to find. And if I just give Hodges a very simple finish of 50th place in those two tournaments, just something to where he makes the weekend and kind of just hovers around nowhere, this would have ended up being the very best value that I had in my model. 16 consecutive rounds of shooting par or better. The statistics are so much better than what the course history looks like. And this is kind of a death blow to my build right now, unfortunately, Joel, because everything was planning around Lee Hodges. So I guess I'll tell you congratulations, but I cannot believe you just did a 3% Lee Hodges to me.
Well, I am very pleased to hear that. That feels good. Virgil, I'd love to hear from you. Are you also high on Lee Hodges this week?
I'm kind of neutral on Lee Hodges. Now, he works with a good buddy of mine, Stephen Purrier, here just south of Tennessee and Alabama. Very solid player. He has so far in his history struggled on what we consider the major championship golf courses. And not that who doesn't really, except if you're Tiger Woods in his prime and a handful of others in certain moments. But to me, the reason why he's struggling on the South course is it taxes every part of your game. And not that everybody does, but he sometimes struggles to bring all of his game. And when you play major championship golf courses, every part of your game is going to get taxed. And so I'm kind of neutral on him because he can be a very, very solid pick here for sure. And in this, what I'd call in the field, he's definitely probably a top 12 pick. I'd say solid. I'm still neutral on him. I wouldn't have probably put him in my top 4.
All right. There you go. Spence, you got your third here. Home and undrafted board, about 7,800 per pick. Where are you going from here?
Not how I plan to make this build, Joel. I am going to completely deviate from the script right now, and I don't know where this is going to leave me because I haven't actually tried to build that was going to be this exact with these 3 players, but I'm going to go with one of the chalkier selections, a player that the proximity numbers still do not look good for him. We know about all the health concerns, the surgeries that he had last year. I think we're starting to see a new version of him moving forward, even if the stats haven't gotten all the way back. You know, Virgil just talked about difficult courses and finding success at difficult courses. Will Zalatoris, when you get a difficult scoring course, is one of those players that always catapults when it comes to both safety and win equity. That's a really good combination to have when you get a challenging course. So I will take Will Zalatoris here at what's going to probably be 25% ownership, kind of a very chalky build with, I assume, most people wanting to go some combination of Homa, Zalatoris, whatever they fit into it. But I'm still disgusted by you, Joel.
Well, I am pleased to hear that. Will Zalatoris, though, solid pick. You're paying up, so you're going to need him to have a good round there, but certainly has the upside. Virgil, you got 2 here. I would love to get your take on Zalatoris, and then where are you going to go with your next 2 picks?
Zalatoris is an interesting pick because we keep on waiting for the pre-surgery version of ball striking to show up. I believe that this is mostly a confidence thing. I think that he when he's watching with his coach, he's playing in his practice rounds, he's striping it. But when you make a pretty significant motion change at the highest level under duress, it's not easy to trust. And he's slowly working his way into that. I think he's a legit pick. And we're all just kind of waiting for it to explode. I would definitely have had him on my board in the top 4 for sure.
All right.
So my first pick, or my next pick, falls under the great short game. We're expecting wind, we're expecting rain, and if there's a player on the board here who has experienced great success in those conditions, his name is Shane Lowry. No real weaknesses. He's not the longest player in the world, but he's not short by any stretch of the imagination. But truly a grinder. One of the best putters we have on the tour, one of the best wedge players we have on the tour. And with the impending weather on the weekend and his ability to play the hard golf course as well, I almost picked him first, to be honest. But when Finau came my way, I decided to stick with him. And my second pick, this is a tough one for me because there's like 4 guys that I got all over. But I'm taking Justin Rose. Justin Rose, one of the best iron players still to this day. He drives it long enough and just super solid across the board, plays major championship golf courses really well. And he is not afraid to be a mutter. And as I said, the conditions that we're expecting on the weekend are really dictating my picks and who's willing to handle 57 degrees, slightly misty, and the wind blowing about 25. I'm leaning towards these European players that's what they grew up in. And so I feel lucky to have those two guys still on the board when I got to this round of my picks.
I love your round here. Those are two solid picks. I think both guys could be seen as underpriced. Lowry has as much upside, I believe, as anybody in this field. And we know Justin Rose, seasoned guy. And to your point, in the conditions, I think that should give him an edge here. So I like the turn you made there. Spence, would love to get your take on Lowry and Rose, and then you're up with your fourth.
I like the Lowry pick a lot. That was, obviously with this exact build I have right now, Lowry's not a name that I could fit into it, but this was a golfer that I think I've been much higher than consensus the entire week. I only see somewhere between 10 to 12.5% ownership, depending on where you're pulling it in from. I talked about wanting to find golfers at the North course that had a big upside for me. Shane Lowry was 6th in my model in that area. If he ends up producing in that capacity with the short game that he possesses over at the South, I agree with Virgil. Like, there's more upside here than meets the eye. And it's kind of, in my opinion, why this price opened lower than a lot of people probably anticipated in the outright market. I think Lowry makes a ton of sense, specifically here for DFS when the ownership's going to be reduced. I am going to take a golfer that I am extremely high on this week. I wrote this over at Win Daily in the Expert Roundtable that Homa was going to be one of the guys that I was building a core around. Oberg makes a ton of sense as another name. The third name that I included into that mix was Daniel Berger. Berger is another golfer. It seems like I have the all injury team from like a year ago right now, but I'm always trying to find a very specific course fit. And when I am looking for ball strikers, one of the things that I want to find in that profile is how do you putt on the specific green complexes that you have that week? Because if you can put the ball striking together and then get a heightened performance with the putter that you don't typically get, that's how you end up stringing together a victory. And over a 2-year running model that I have, Daniel Berger's 109th in strokes gained putting. But if I remove every single round that is not on POA greens and I only include POA greens for it, he actually jumps inside of the top 30 for me in expected putting. So if that is the output that we could potentially get from him, and I know he's typically your guy, Joel, and I feel like we might now be trying to find something here in California with him to where you look at the past, different course, completely different course, but he's won at Pebble. He's won in California. He's found success. And I think that when you look specifically at the putter more than anything else, and it's the Zalatoris answer that sometimes comes into play, when the score gets to between, we'll just call it single digits to 12, 13 under par, ball striking goes a long way. You don't need to make quite as many putts. And if you're creating opportunities, you don't get as damaged with the putter sometimes there. And I really like Berger's upside that he possesses. And if we can see that POA increase, I think there's real win equity to be found with Berger.
Well, you know me. I'm not going to complain about a Danny Berger pick. You probably was going to take him with one of my last picks. Listen, we've seen the upside. We know the ball striking can be there. He's got to find that putter. But when he starts making putts, the results are going to come. That could be this week. So I'm behind that pick as well. Virgil, would love to hear from you. What's your take on Daniel Berger this week?
Not really on my bingo card this week. I don't really have anything negative to say about his game, but I don't find him in a situation where he's long enough to tackle the South course 3 days in a row without the putter being rock solid. He does have a lower ball flight, which is going to bode well for the conditions that we're going to see. I would put him in the middle of the pack for me, but I'm expecting this guy to really, he's had such a hard road with his wrist, but man, right before the wrist injury, he was legit every single time to be a threat to win on Sunday. So hoping the best for him. I just don't have him this week.
All right. There you have it. I'm up here, audience. You're after me. My pick is locked in, so feel free to start getting your nominations in to keep this draft moving. With my pick here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take Austin Eckroat. I think Austin Eckroat, while he missed the cut at the Sony Open a couple weeks ago, he was 15th at the Century in January of this year. If you go back toward the end of last year, he was playing fantastic. He won the Worldwide Technology. His ball striking has been spectacular, and he has the ability to spike with that putter. Now, if you go back toward the summertime, his putter was atrocious. Really kind of held him back. But toward the end of the summer, heading into the fall, the fall, he really heated up that putter. And if he's able to spike that putter with the distance and the ball striking that he brings, there is a ton of upside with Eckroat. At 7,700, it's a volatile pick, but I think it brings a lot of upside in the 7K range. So if we're going to go out and win a tournament, I'm going to take a bet on Eckroat to be able to help me do so. Virgil, it looks like you're agreeing with me, so I'd love to get your take. Are you in on Austin Eckroat this week?
Yeah, you just took my next pick. That's very disappointing. Great ball flight for this event. Really a sneaky good ball hitter. Like you said, the putters is as a lot of people out there, the putter is the big question mark. But for the value, he's probably a top 5 value pick on the whole board. That's an awesome pick for me. That's for sure.
All right. I love it. Audience, we need 2 from you. You have a lot of nominations in, but none have been doubled yet. So we're going to need an audience leader to step up and lock in a pick. A lot of options out there. We're just going to need one of them doubled. While we wait, Spence, we'll go to you. Is Austin Eckroat on your radar this week?
I like the Austin Eckroat selection also. Inside of the top 30 of my model in all iterations of how I ran it. A lot of the total driving numbers in my sheet look great. Like he's inside the top 15 for me in that area, including being inside the top 5 off the tee at narrow fairways. So I think from a course fit perspective, Eckroat makes a ton of sense.
All right. Off the board. It looks like the audience has one at least in Smalley, which, it's funny. I was actually debating Smalley or Eckroat there. So maybe I made a mistake. Probably should have gone Smalley first, but now Smalley's off the board. Audience took him. Another good value play who's been playing really well to start the year. So if you're looking for a guy who's in form, I think Alex Smalley certainly fits that description. Looks like the second pick is also locked in with Svensson. So Smalley and Svensson, 2 really solid value plays. I think the audience did a really good job starting with their top picks early and now finding some value here late in the draft. Virgil, I'd love to hear from you. Are you interested in Alex Smalley or Jesper Svensson this week?
Svensson for sure. He's got the ball striking package that's going to match up beautiful, one for the South Course, but also for the conditions that we're going to see. Once again, there's another pick that just went off my board. Very, very good pick by the audience. Love that one.
All right, lock it in. All right, I have to pivot because I was planning to take Smalley here, so I'm gonna go ahead and pivot to Andrew Novak with my next pick. Now, Andrew Novak's one of my guys. I love Andrew Novak. Hasn't been off to as hot of a start this season as I would have liked to have seen from him. But I'm banking on what we saw for a majority of last year, which was just consistently excellent. He's one of those guys that's a kind of a streaky putter. Some weeks he can spike really high. At the American Express, he lost 2 strokes putting. So if he finds that putting stroke and gets back to the player really we saw for a majority of 2024, I think there's a lot to like. And the numbers aren't terrible. It's not like he's fallen off a cliff. He lost less than half a stroke at the American Express on approach. He gained stroke off the tee each of the Sony Open and the American Express. He's gaining strokes around the green. So I feel like there's a lot to like about his game. His distances and proximities are going to be good for this field. So at 7K, I still feel like they've undervalued Novak, which they've been doing for a year. And I'm going to bank on what we've seen from him for a majority of 2024. And I think we get a good result this week. Spence, you're up here with your 5th pick. Would love to get your take on the audience's round and Andrew Novak.
I really don't know right now, Joel, what you are doing because Andrew Novak's like 1% owned, and somehow that was going to be my next selection. So this has just been wild outcome that has taken place. But when we look at Andrew Novak, it's kind of a very similar answer from exactly what I just said with Lee Hodges. The one difference here for Novak is some of the upside numbers inside of my model just absolutely love him across the board. Like I was shocked to see this for a player that has started the season miscut, and has no course history. But I think for GPP contests, you have to know what you're signing up for. There's volatility to be had with this pick. That's certainly the case. There's a reason why he's 1 or 2% owned, but I think the upside is maybe a little bit higher than the general population is giving him credit for. So I really like that pick, Joel. I am going to do something that you don't normally see from me on this show. I'm going to deviate away from my model and take a selection that my model is not very high on, but it's the same answer that I have now given 3 times on this show of injuries or some health concerns that have taken place. I wrote an article when I started in this space in 2018, and I talked about Gary Woodland, and Gary Woodland had a quote talking about Torrey Pines and the South Course specifically, about how he thought he had a built-in edge over the rest of the field. And when you look at what he's done recently there, not necessarily what we saw early in his career, but still 12 out of 14 tournaments, he's made the cut here. The biggest thing for me is, as I've said, I run things from a very long-term perspective. If you just shorten this down into the last 5 tournaments and look at what Gary Woodland has produced, 16th at the Sanderson Farms, 9th at the Shriners, 33rd at the Zozo, which is not as great, miscut at the RSM, a 16th last week at the Sony Open. That has been with him gaining off the tee in every single start. We're starting to see the long iron proximity advantage that he used to have come back into play. Not necessarily showing in my model right now, but I think there's more upside with this pick than a lot of the names down here. And I'm going to swing for the fence on somebody that has made 12 of 14 cuts at this tournament and seems to have turned the corner recently.
All right. Pick locked in. Gary Woodland. Haven't heard his name in a while, but I did have my eye on him this week. I think it's an intriguing pick at 7,200. I think you're getting a good value pick. Virgil, you got 2 here, but would love to get your take on Gary Woodland and Andrew Novak as well.
Both of those gentlemen wouldn't have been on my my pick list. I don't really believe that Gary Woodland, is about as nice of a guy as you could ever want to root for. I just don't think his game's in the place where it's going to withstand a major championship test like this 3 days in a row. Novak, I'm kind of neutral on him. He has the ability to light it up. I think he has good potential for the North Course. He catches it on the good day. But he's not on my radar screen. But at the end of the day, for a 5 pick, really good though, really good. So my pick, this is right down my alley. I can't even believe he's still here. Is Jonathan Vegas. Johnny Vegas. To me, this golf course sets up perfect for him. He's had some reasonable success here and fits what I'm looking for, which is a guy who literally knocks the front of the ball through the back of the ball all day long, and is solid around the green and not that bad of a putter. He's had success here before, and I won't be surprised if he wins, to be honest with you. This guy's the real deal. And my other pick, this one was really tough for me because I have like 6 guys that I'm liking a lot. But I am going to go with Patrick Rodgers. Patrick Rodgers, God, he's come so close so many different times. He's not afraid to mud it out. And like I said, the distance there, the ball striking there, he's a pretty solid putter. I just think that if he gets off to a slow start, he needs to get off to a good start. If he gets off to a good start, he's a legit contender. And I really like him as a kind of a dark horse pick for sure.
I think that's a really good point you made. We've seen those tournaments when Rodgers gets off to an early hot start, off to an early lead, he tends to stick around. Right? I've never really seen him really chase up the leaderboard. When he gets off hot, though, he can play well for a few days. So I think that's an interesting pick there. And of course, I'm with you on Johnny Vegas. I'm a Johnny Vegas guy. The audience has seen I draft him quite often. And to your point, it is a good course fit. If he finds a hot putter this week, I think you can get a top 10. Like you said, he has the upside to go out and win this tournament. Spencer, would love to get your take on Vegas and Rogers, and then you got your last pick here.
Yeah, I like the Vegas pick a lot also. When I was talking about Woodland and the reasons why I liked him and how I talked about him loving this course, Vegas gave a very similar answer when I constructed that article. And you've seen it, maybe not so much recently with him, but before that, like, if you just want to look at a pure total driver of the golf ball, he's about as good as you can get on the PGA Tour. And specifically for this field, you're not going to find much that are better than him on that. So for me specifically, he's number 2 in weighted total driving. The only person that he's behind would naturally be Oberg with that answer. Obviously Virgil has taken approach there where Steven Yeager is 4th. There's a lot to like about a lot of those names. I'm going to go in a direction with one of the worst expected drivers after giving all these comments about a driver. And I'm going to try to find a golfer here that maybe can find a little bit more of that Brandt Snedeker success that has been found in the past. You're not going to necessarily find that with the short iron proximity, and he's not as elite of a putter. And I don't know what the upset actually is. If I had my way here, I wish this would be Lee Hodges. This would have been a very natural way for me to round out my lineup, but I'm going to take up Jacob Bridgman at 7,000. I talked about at the North Course how I'm trying to find upside at that particular facility. The South Course, there might be a little bit too much distance for him over 3 days. There's a reason why he's 1% owned at the end of the day. Like, a lot of people are not playing him for that reason. But when I looked at the North property and I looked at some of those shorter holes, he ranked number 1 in my model in expected scoring in the par 4s from 350 to 400 yards. I'm hoping to get a cut here. I'm hoping that he works himself up the leaderboard. And it's just the contrarian selection to kind of round out this build that I have, which has tons of chalk from top to bottom.
All right. Final pick locked in. Jacob Bridgman. We've seen some upside, a little bit inconsistent, but the upside's there. If he has a hot week, he certainly can compete this week. All right, for my last pick here, as we move this draft along, I'm going to go ahead and take Mark Hubbard. Mark Hubbard has just been playing better golf recently, better than what we've historically seen from him. In the 2 tournaments he's teed it up thus far this year in 2025, he's gained over 2.5 strokes on approach and over 5 strokes on approach. He has a pretty consistent driver. He lost strokes last week with the driver, but usually he's a pretty consistent driver. And the putter's a mixed bag. I would say he's more consistently a good putter than not. He gained 2 strokes with the putter at the American Express, and he has the distance to compete on this course. So at 7,800, I don't think Mark Hubbard's going to go out and win, but as my last pick, I think he can get me a top 20, which is what I would need from here at this last pick. So I think he's good enough, and the consistency will round out my squad here. Audience, your last pick here. You have 7,200 to spend. Looks like a few nominations in. We're going to need one more to lock that final pick in. Virgil, while we wait, I'd love to hear from you. Are you interested in Jacob Bridgman or Mark Hubbard this week?
Oh, definitely Mark Hubbard. When that dude is putting, the hole looks that big for him, which is very opposite of what it looks like for me. But nevertheless, I always wonder, the numbers look like he should have won multiple times on the tour. But he definitely has this issue with 9 holes in the tournaments. And I don't know if that's a mental thing or if it's just circumstantial evidence. But I've been waiting for this guy to win for a while because there's no real apparent weakness in his game. And man, he puts the eyeballs out of it. But I think it's a sneaky pick. That was one of the 3 people that I almost took when I took Patrick Rogers. Awesome pick.
Awesome. I love it. Makes me feel good about that one. Yeah. And audience, great job getting that final pick in. Kevin Yu, it is at 7,100, rounding out the audience squad. Audience, it's a nice looking draft. Kevin Yu wasn't on my radar, but hey, he could be a sneaky pick. He should be able to help you with the distance. Spence, I'll ask you, was Kevin Yu on your radar for this week?
I think Kevin Yu's a good selection. 3rd in my model with you add distance plus long iron proximity together. There were a couple of routes that I was considering at the very end. Sam Stevens, I saw his name mentioned in this chat. Kevin Yu. It's those kind of players that I am trying to round out builds at the very bottom. So I like the Kevin Yu selection.
All right, lock it in. I love it. That's a wrap for the draft tonight. Don't forget, smash the like button, give us a follow. It goes a long way. We had a lot of fun tonight. We'll be posting these lineups online. Let us know whose team you think is going to win. As we do every week, we will be crowning a winner and doing it again next week. But a big thank you to Virgil for coming on and drafting with us tonight. As a reminder, we're not going to be doing first round leaders as there's multiple courses. So therefore, we'll sort of skip that portion. And we'll save that for a few weeks from now. We'll bring that back to the show. But for tonight, as we wrap up, a big thank you to Virgil for coming on and drafting with us. Virgil, before we say goodbye, is there anywhere else folks can find you or follow you to get the great information you're sharing with everyone on the show tonight?
I have multiple platforms. On Instagram, I have Virgil.Herring that has all of my business, and Virgil Herring Golf, which is just my golf teaching. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, and anywhere you can look on the social media platform. And my website is virgilherring.com. I do lessons via Zoom, FaceTime. If you can't get to Nashville, Tennessee, it's bizarre. I have a bizarre amount of Australian and New Zealand clients that I'm giving them lessons at like 9 o'clock my time, and it's the next morning for them. So it makes it a lot of fun for me. So technology has really helped the golf teacher out. That's for sure.
We'll have to bring you back on with David so you guys can sync up. You might have some clients that know David, as that is where they live. But we super appreciate your knowledge was top notch. So if you guys are listening to the show, listen back, get this information, and win some money with us this week. And don't forget, sign up for Win Daily. You will easily make your money back. And of course, you get some extra. So if you sign up, you get into Discord, you'll get Steven's ownership article. If you're playing DFS, you're going to want to see the average ownership, because that is how you find an edge in these big tournaments. You also get to get into our Discord where we'll give weather updates. So if there's anything changing as we get closer to tee-off time. Now, don't forget, we're starting on Wednesday, not Thursday this week, because they don't want to compete with the NFL on Sunday. So you'll get any weather changes or updates that we find. You also get our outright bets and expert picks and everything like that. So make sure you follow along. Good luck this week. Let us know who you win. And of course, sports. Okay, so here's the issue. I can't actually end the show, so we might be on all night. I think I could maybe do.
He can remove himself from the show and leave us on, Virgil.
No pressure.
Well, I mean, until we're able to get off of this, I guess if people are still listening, let me ask you a question. Yep. So we ran through what there, like 24 picks got selected. Who did not get picked in this draft that you are surprised about?
I have a couple on my list. Doug Gim has played well here. He plays great on the West Coast. That was the one that was really torn between Patrick Rogers and him, and Hubbard, of course, as well. Those are my three. I think that he's a good one. You know, Taylor Moore didn't even make a bogey last week. Not necessarily a great track record at this golf course, but he's in great form. And there's another player, Matt Wallace. He doesn't have any standing on any tour. Beware of the hungry golfer. He's played well in the first couple of events on the European Tour. And to me, I almost took him, but when I realized how much money I had left, I didn't have to go that far down the board. Johnny Vegas had my name like totally etched all over it. But those are the ones that jumped out at me. I thought about Sam Ryder a little bit because he played well in the past, but his game is not on form. And I'm always waiting for Bo Hostler to show up. Another guy that it seems to get emotionally wrecked by one bad shot. It gets him pretty good. It got him last week as well. But the super solid ball striker, he's got a great game, but hasn't broken through like I would have expected. But that guy's going to break through at some point. He's so good.
Yeah, I've been kind of touting this Bo Hostler in California on Poa Greens at some point is going to occur. And I think the market in general seems to be very high on him. You look at any of the sharper moving markets, he's been one of the names that has been bet down. You brought up a couple names there that were interesting. My model, like Doug Gim from an upside perspective, definitely considered him also if I would have had more money. And then the Matt Wallace call, I do really like. The only thing that worried me about Matt Wallace, and maybe this is thinking too too much into this example here, but he has a tough travel schedule coming over from Dubai. Like, that's the only reason that it kept him off of my team, and I went in the different route that I did. But I think Wallace, from a statistical standpoint, is an ideal course fit for this venue.
I agree, and I thought that's why I didn't pick him. Is that that 20-hour flight and a Wednesday start? That was a cocktail for me to back off that. No matter how hungry he is, he's not 25, and I backed off. I'll tell you there's two other names. I was surprised Keegan Bradley didn't go off the board. He's one of the higher profile names, and he's been playing reasonably solid. But I don't know why it is about him. I just didn't pull the trigger on him, and a past champion and another guy that I've spent some time with here at Vanderbilt, Luke List. He's kind of fallen off, but my goodness, you want to talk about somebody who absolutely pounds it and hits it bizarrely straight for as long as he hits it. But the putter has been evading him since he was a teenager, and it's evaporating in front of his eyes. But first of all, he's one of the nicest guys in the world, and so much talent. It just oozes out of him. But until that putter gets fixed, he's a difficult person to put in your lineup because it can evade him so badly, but super talent.
Yeah, from an ownership standpoint, it looks like the three highest owned guys that did not get picked, at least according to my numbers. The first name would be Taylor Pendrith. I'm seeing about 20.5% ownership. Keegan Bradley, as you mentioned, 18%. And then the third name would be Sahith Theegala at 15.5%. It looks like everybody else would be less than 15% that did not get selected. I'll ask you one more question. I don't know how we actually get out of here, Virgil. We might be on a loop that never ends at this point, but I see Albert asking in the chat. I'm not capable on my end to bring up the question, but Frank Capon, do you have any thoughts on him this week?
I don't. I wouldn't put him in my like say somebody that I expect to finish in the top 25. I don't really know what kind of track record he has at this golf course. I don't think he has much history here. And I don't believe it wouldn't be on my radar screen. Once again, if you're on the PGA Tour, you got the game to do it. But I wouldn't have picked him this week for sure. I mean, like, there are a couple other names that do strike me as interesting that you mentioned. Taylor Pendrith, man, you talk about somebody who I can't believe I forgot him. I would have actually picked him. I was not looking at him because he was kind of high priced, and I was already deep into my cash by the time I started to see that. He is a sneaky good pick. Theegala, I don't know why I just didn't think about him as a real threat on this golf course. He's not the longest player. He's certainly not short. And as the weather turns, I know he's from California, but I'm not buying him in difficult conditions yet. He's a very good fair weather golfer, but I don't really think of him as a legit threat, major championship golf course in difficult conditions. Not yet, anyway.
It's funny you mentioned that about Theegala, because I think the general population, I know Theegala has the highlight reel short game that sometimes comes out and comes into play, but from a statistical perspective, the scrambling numbers do not look very good. He's inaccurate off the tee at a course that has these very narrow fairways and thick rough. I don't have a strong take one way or another on Theegala. I understand why people are playing him. I think he has more upside than he has safety at the end of the day. As far as the Pendrith pick goes, if I did not take Will Zalatoris, Pendrith would have been the selection. I was kind of surprised to see Zalatoris last for as long as he did. I think Pendrith at the price tag, to me, is probably one of the more mispriced golfers on the slate.
I think one of the intangibles to picking this event is the fact that the field strength is abnormally weak for this event for whatever reason. I'm not quite sure. A bunch of bizarre withdrawals. So that leads these young guys who have all the talent, can bomb it, can really, and they don't have to look at a leaderboard and see any real name that's got them freaked out. And they don't feel like, on Sunday, I remember the very first year that Brandt played in this event, he started with the 61. But when it came down to the weekend and he's in the final group, who's you got to stare at? The big cat. And it's really hard as a rookie on the PGA Tour staring down a Tiger Woods, for that matter, Xander Schauffele, or any one of the guys that aren't playing this week. I can't believe Patrick Cantlay's not playing. Another California guy that's not on here. It's bizarre, but when there's no big names and the people that you've been playing practice rounds with, you see them at the top of the leaderboard, you're like, I beat this guy all the time. It's those little things that happen during the practice rounds that see that confidence on weekends. And I remember when Lucas Glover won the U.S. Open at Bethpage, and that was the last year that I coached Brandt, and Brandt was like, if Lucas Glover can win a U.S. Open, I can win a major championship. I beat that guy all the time. And what did he do? He won like 2 weeks later. And it's those little things when you see one of your friends break through, or a peer that you've been playing with for a long time crack through, those little things go off in your head like, wait a second, if that guy can do it, I can do it. And you don't really think that when Tiger Woods was in his prime. You don't really think that about Rory or DJ or any of the very best players that could literally just run away with it whenever the heck they wanted to. Those people strike fear in you. But I don't really see any name in this tournament. And I'm not even saying, I think Oberg is definitely the best player in the field, but he doesn't strike fear in me yet. So I don't really think that there's anybody that's young and feels like this might be my week to win a big golf tournament. I think they're licking their chops because they feel like they have a chance to win a very big golf tournament on a major championship golf course, and they won't have to really stare down somebody that you'd normally have to stare down at this event.
With all the fires that are occurring in the Los Angeles area right now, do you think there's something to be said with the Genesis getting moved to this course? Do you think players didn't want to play the South venue that many times because of the difficulty of it?
Man, I hadn't given that any thought because Xander withdrew before that was announced. And I don't know about Colin Morikawa at the timing of it. I think that he actually withdrew before that too. I think it's possible. I also think that you're dealing with like Morikawa and Xander went Hawaii and then to Florida to the TGL. They're probably just beat, and they don't want to be beat before they even get to the Masters. And all that travel, that's what makes it so fascinating. These guys coming from Dubai, and there's a lot of big travel early in the year. And I think the really top players, especially as they get into their late 20s and early 30s and they start to have a family, those things wear and tear on you. And they probably just felt like, I'm going to wait. But I definitely say if you got 7 rounds of golf in the next 3 weeks on the South Course at Torrey Pines, that's a lot of whippings you got to take.
Yeah, it's very grueling. I know there used to be this adage in the space, and I don't think it's necessarily played out that way over the last couple of years, but I know everybody used to always say that the ideal path to actually winning this tournament was to start on the South, go to the North, and then you end at the South with it. That if you have 3 consecutive days at the South, that it can be a little too grueling. And people ran with that narrative for a while. I don't know how much truth there is to that. I do think that if now all of a sudden we talk about 7 rounds at a place and the wear and tear that comes into play, maybe there's a little bit more to be said about that. Like, it didn't change my player pool at all for this week, but I do think you have a good point about 7 rounds being a very grueling test to be had. I will ask you one more question, and then I guess we'll just exit this and say goodbye to everybody. But as somebody who was a coach, and now you have simulator golf with TGL, what are your thoughts on TGL? Do you like it? Do you think it has room to grow?
I think there are a couple key things that we're seeing. I think we're already seeing the power of the shot clock. That shot clock in the first one, first of all, it really rattled the guys because they were really paying attention to it. But now the pace of play in the last 3 events has been so slow. Like I saw yesterday that both NFL football games, both playoff football games, took only 1 more hour than 3 guys to play 18 holes at the Amex. Wow. That's painful for the PGA Tour to hear. That shot clock is big. But if there is anything that is glaringly apparent, is that if we don't start to see the personalities and or some trash talk, like we always need a little bit of professional wrestling, barbing and getting at, so we can start to see some emotion, it's going to die because it gets flat. And I really don't know if I like the idea that they're not playing real golf courses. I can't believe they're not playing real golf courses that people can, that's on any one of the systems that they're out there. But if we start to see some making fun of players, getting in people's kitchen a little bit, talking a little trash, even if they already know it's just kind of like professional wrestling, it's not really real, but for the entertainment purposes, for the crowd that's drawing, they love that trash talk. They love the barbs. They love the humor. And everybody has been dying to get to know these people on more than just the surface layer on the PGA Tour. And I don't think Ricky Fowler's done a great job of being the fun dude that he is on TV. I don't know if the indoor just has him a little bit rattled. He didn't do a great job, in my opinion. Max Homa didn't do a great job. And I really think that if somebody could have the cojones to really kind of barb Tiger Woods, because there's no better trash talker than Tiger, maybe other than Phil. And I think that he has the upper edge on Phil. Having somebody take a poke at Rory or Tiger when they don't hit a good shot and get one of those two guys kind of fired up so that you could start to see a little bit of animation out of this, I think it's going to die flat. I've heard some really cool takes on they should really do a better job marketing themselves and also have this little walkout that they have. They should try to make it a little bit more MMA or UFC than they do as well. And why is that? It's not that they have to be UFC, but if you'd see how just adding a little flair and a little personality has totally exploded the UFC. I mean, they have to be thinking that, because I do not see how it's going to last when you have basically blowouts and everybody's just kind of standard golf talk. They're going to need some jabs and some poking, or it's going to fall flat.
Yeah, I haven't watched enough of it to give a very strong opinion. One of the things I saw today is, and I think a lot of the chirps around it were directed towards Cameron Young, that, Cameron Young didn't open his mouth for like the first 30 minutes on the show. And I agree with what you said. It's one of those situations where they almost went theatrical in the approach of the courses or the fake holes that they used, where if you could go over the top that WWE persona with the personality, but then you can actually play the real courses and holes that people know. Just take a combination of, I think they use, somebody told me, around 50 different holes that are these made up facilities that they have. Like, just take the 50 best holes that people vote on throughout the world and use those places. And I think that's where people can then tune in. You can see the holes that you love. You can see them play on a simulator. And then you have the back and forth jarring. And then all of a sudden you have something that lasts for a lot longer than what it probably will right now.
I agree. I love the idea of letting the audience pick a top 50. And every week they just pick a random selection of it. I just think that if you put the golf courses out there that people have played, that they can visualize themselves doing it, both whether they've done it on a sim or actually played it in real life, and you get a chance to watch, but you got all this up close and personal. Everybody, it's pretty intimate, and yet everybody's acting as if it's the Masters. There has to be an element of fun and poking, or it's going to lose its core audience. And then I don't believe the recreational golfer can sustain that model when it comes to the price that they're paying.
I think that makes a lot of sense. All right, Virgil, we will let everybody get out of here. Shout out one more time where everybody can find you. And, standard to the show for anybody who's still tuning in at this moment, Joel couldn't make it through the entire show and ended up bailing on us at the end. So very standard for Joel to withdraw. But Virgil, tell everybody where they can find you.
Best place to find me on Instagram, Virgil.Herring, my website, virgilherring.com. And if you feel so compelled to give me a buzz, 615-579-5190. Happy to help any way I can.
Thank you, Virgil. Appreciate the time of you coming on the show. For everybody out there, good luck this week. We will be back with the show next Tuesday, 9 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Pacific. Virgil, I am sure we will have you on before long again. You were a great guest on this, a lot of great information. So good luck to everybody this week at Torrey Pines, and we will see you guys back again next week.